Hi Kelly. So I wanted to update you on Colby. First thing is that the video worked the entire time, so I've already checked. You'll be able to watch a full session today. Colby's been doing amazing. She comes out, she stretches really well. There's a couple things we're working on. One is just keeping her forward. She tends to be a little bit lazy at times, or less motivated to give me a really active walk. And so I've been trying to encourage her forward. And she's a little like sensitive, I guess, about me going to use the whip but not actually touching her. So I'll show you kind of what we've been doing, but I just want her to know the whip means go forward. It doesn't mean like she seems to almost kind of like flinch and go like take a couple of quick steps. So I'm just trying to work on reinforcing, you know, the whip means forward walk, and so we've been playing around with that a little bit. You'll see that come up in here where sometimes I ask for a bigger walk and she gives me a trot or breaks into the canter. And the other thing we've been doing that's different is working on the pee-off. And she's doing really well with that. We've done it maybe 4 or 5 times now. And what I expected, because, Heath is like very forward thinking. He comes out, he has a big stride, and Colby's not necessarily like that. So I didn't think she'd like how hard the pee-off is, but because I have those treats, the insulin, the IR safe treats, she loves the pee-off because she gets food. So I'll show you that a little bit at the end today as well. But there you see kind of the overreaction with the whip lately, and really all I'm trying to do is just sometimes I'll tap her and she doesn't do anything. So she's less likely to give me any sort of reaction when I actually like physically connect her with the whip. When it's like in the backswing and I'm like flicking it back so I can like tap her on the haunches, she's more likely to kind of like be like, oh no, and kind of scoot. And really the only thing I'm looking for here is that when I use the whip, something happens. And so if she like flinches but just stays walking slowly, then I back it up with another tap, and then so now she's getting to the point where she kind of like it's more clear. Like if the whip is moving, it means that she needs to be moving. And so right now we're just kind of in the phase of her being very aware of what the whip is doing. So there's a little bit more breaking into the trot and canter to kind of both, I think, because of the awareness of the whip, and also because she's getting so strong in the trot, and you'll see even the canter, she's stretching a little bit now in the canter, that it's easier for her to come here and give me the trot than it is for her to do the big walk. Especially because I've been using this like sandier part of the arena. And so, we go through the sand and that is harder for her. So it's a little bit easier to give me this trot than it is the walk. But I love the trot here. It's swinging. It's got this nice rhythm to it. She gets to a place where she's still tracking up, but I can see her trot is like sending the energy up. So you wouldn't have to work very hard to post to this trot. Obviously here it's a bit quicker. I was asking her to kind of go on a little bit, but she's stretching nicely. The one thing that I do want to see her doing more of in the trot, and I think I mentioned this in the last video too, is just you can see she's a little bit behind the vertical in the trot. So for me, even though she's getting stronger, I still like to see her stretch as deeply as possible, because I want to see that strength in her neck so that she can hold her head on the vertical, or her nose can be poked out a little bit. And right now I think she has this tendency to kind of curl back, and that little bit of like it's almost like a kink or the crease between that like 3rd and 4th vertebrae So like here you can see her nose is poked out. The energy, like as she pushes each step, it's like coming out through her nose. So you can see her kind of like, her head's kind of bobbing with each step. She's relaxed, her ears are, nice and just kind of aware, but not pinned. Sometimes in the very beginning, like I think back to when we were doing the in-hand work, and she wasn't always happy. Just looking and chewing there. Like, I love everything about this picture. So I, in the past week, have actually been doing a little bit, trying to get the walk work, so that she's, especially with the lunge, with the using the lunge whip, she's a little bit more eager to break into a trot or canter. But I've been trying to do some longer segments of walk because she is so strong. The trot's looking really nice. The canter's coming along. That I really want to keep her here in this like really nice deep stretch, so that we can just help that neck that like ligament in her neck kind of get a little bit tighter, and that neck be able to kind of hold that nose out, especially when she goes into the trot. And when you see me do the pee-off work with her, she's learning something new, so there's, tension there. But what eventually my goal is with the pee-off is that she's stretching deeply and doing the pee-off work too, so that she's getting stronger. So like here's a perfect example of that, like not quite paying attention, and then like kind of let me run away because I'm worried about the whip. And with her, and I don't know, I'd love to hear your experience with lunging her, and kind of what you know from her history. But like, when I actually tap her with the whip, majority of the time, like nothing really happens. Like she's not actually concerned when it touches her. She's concerned when like I miss her, or it like kind of flings by her and she like hears the whip. Then it's like, oh no. So we've just been trying to I've just been trying to make it just very clear. Like the whip means forward. It doesn't mean you're just like getting hit. You actually have to, it has a purpose. It means to go forward. So eventually, now that like we have this, she's much more paying attention to it, and aware of the meaning. The relaxation will come back. I think she'll spend a lot more time in the walk, and she won't always be breaking to the trot or canter. Again, here she went up to the canter. She's counter cantering. I don't worry about that because her balance, and again, this is her hard direction, and that was a fairly small circle to be cantering on. Her balance is really good. It's very improved. So I don't mind her counter cantering. Again, to me, I don't want her to think that she can just do this like slow pokey canter with her head in the air and kind of get out of the work. So even if she picks up the wrong lead, or even if she cross canters, and it's a whole mess. As long as she looks fairly balanced, I'm going to send her on in the canter so that she's like, oh wow, this is work, and again, is like willing to come back and do, give me a little bit more effort with the walk or the trot or whatever we're doing. Again, this trot looks really nice. She's swinging and relaxed. And so I gave her a little walk break here. This walk looks really nice to me. I like the walk to be nice and active, for her to stay pushing. And with Colby, probably less so with Heath, again, just because he has that natural tendency to be forward. I do have Colby probably give me a walk that is a faster pace than is probably necessary, because I like to be able to give her a break so that even if she slows down a little bit, like naturally, she's still going to be covering ground and she's still going to be pushing. So this doesn't have to be, marching along here quite so much. I like her to at least be tracking up, because I know she can. So stepping into those front hoof prints. And again, there, she tends to slow down a little bit more in the sand. It's harder. It's a little bit, the footing's deeper there. Here on the grass, she has more traction, so she tends to give me a better stretch. And again, there, I was just moving the whip in my hand, and she is very aware that now, the whip is, if she does just kind of flinch when I tap her rather than go forward, I back it up with another, I back it up and tap her again. And so she's kind of, even with just like a little flick, she's much more aware of what I'm doing with the whip now. So she's not cross cantering here. And again, it's pretty well balanced. She's actually stretching and she's on a much smaller circle than what I normally work her on. So it's nice to see. Even like two or 3 months ago, she was having a really hard time on this circle going this direction. So I like that change in her, the relaxation. Tracking right is much easier for her. And again, that's lovely. I love this trot. This is just looking really nice. And I like to see that when I send her on, she's actually, if she isn't stretching as much, she actually goes into a slightly deeper stretch, which is, ultimately when we're riding, everything on the ground, hopefully will correlate to the ridden work so that, when I squeeze with my leg and she comes into my hand, she softens. So it's good to see that that's working. And so that, the trot was super nice. I let her come down. She does, the transitions aren't perfect, but I am starting to see her have downward transitions where she stays stretched occasionally. I don't think it happened in this session, but the transitions are usually the last piece to come together. So I don't worry about it. Again, like this walk work, I love the walk work, especially for her, especially with, wanting to make sure that she can stay on the vertical or a little bit in front of the vertical when she's trotting. Like this walk is helping with that, and it's also, she's getting stronger. It's going to help with the transitions as well. So I don't worry about, schooling the transition. It will come on its own. But I like that, her nose is a little bit in front of the vertical, and that's just personal preference. I like to see a little bit in front of the vertical rather than directly on. And again, especially with Colby, because I think her tendency would be to kind of curl and have her nose closer to her chest. This is beautiful. I wouldn't change anything about this. And again, you can see I picked the whip up. She kind of gave me a slow trot, but she stays really active in the walk. And that to me is an appropriate response. You can see there I just took a little bit of contact with the lunge line and she softened and gave me a deeper stretch. These are all like great indicators that the training is going to come through in the ridden work as well. That softening, the reaching forward for contact. So she picks up the wrong lead again. Not a big deal. Asked her to come back. I asked her for the right lead, and you can see it's not perfect, but she's having moments where she's stretching down a little bit. That looks nice. That looks nice. That looks nice. So it's not, you can see I'm kind of like running and trying to give her more and more space on the lunge line because it looks really nice and I want her to like have that reward. Like that's what I want, and I want to make it easy because she's trying. So that was, what I wanted to show you is that canter coming together. she's strong enough that she can stretch a little bit and she doesn't just break. And that was what I was seeing before, was she would start to stretch and it was hard and she'd come back to the trot. So we weren't doing a ton of canter. Like, I was never really asking her for canter because I knew it wasn't quite there yet, but now she is. Like, she looks strong enough to hold it for a little bit and strong enough that I can ask her for a little bit of stretch in the canter and she can maintain it. So we're starting to do a little bit more canter work, which is exciting. And again, this is her harder direction, so it's really wonderful to see that like flexibility in her body a little bit, and that she has the strength to this side now that she didn't have before. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this, but the reason the surcingle is on and there's like nothing going on with it, like I don't have side reins or anything, it's just so that I can strap the camera tag onto her body so that the camera tracks her. So that's the only reason why her and Heath wear the surcingle when I do these sessions. Normally when I'm working them and we're not recording, they don't wear the surcingle because I don't need it for... They don't need anything extra right now. As Colby gets stronger, and especially once that crease in her neck is gone, which it can take a while. Will talks about taking 2 years to fully heal. I don't know that she's not that classic really the neck kind of slopes and all of a sudden you have this point, and then from maybe a hand or two to back from the ears, the neck just the top of the neck just kind of falls down a little bit. She's not like that. She has plenty of strength. She just likes to be behind the vertical a little bit. So I don't think it's going to take forever, but once she doesn't have that desire to be behind the vertical, and again, it's not here so much in the canter. I see it mostly in the trot. And again, she's stretching really nicely here. But once that she's not coming behind the vertical, then absolutely she could be worked in side reins to try and put her into to offer her a working frame to see how she does. And again, here that, she can do the working frame and maintain the swing in the trot, but she ends up with her nose a little bit behind the vertical. So that's going forward with that piece. That's why we haven't done anything in the working trot, or the working gaits really, even though her top line's getting so much stronger, and she's doing the pee-off now. There are certainly indicators that she can sometimes hold a working frame, but for a session where I'm lunging, if I was riding, I might play with it a little bit in the walk, bring her up and see how she does, and then drop her back down. But to lunge, I know her right here, she wants to be behind the vertical, so it would, even just to try the side reins, it would just be too much. I think she would she'd have that backward pressure on the bit and just kind of keep her nose back, and I really wanted to poke forward, so that's why she was just lunging with just the lunge line over the crown of her pole. So she's itching at the surcingle. Thought maybe she had a bug, but in a minute here I think she does it again. And I used to have these straps too that let the side reins be even longer. I just took spur straps and added them. And also because my side reins were nylon, they kind of acted as like a breakaway safety. So I had them on the surfing the last time, and I think it drove her crazy because they were just like flapping around and touching her side when she was itching at them. So those are off this time, but something about it bugged her. So I ended up, I don't know what happens here, but I did end up loosening the second buckle because it seemed like something was bugging her. And then she's been fine. But again, this walk looks really nice and relaxed. She's, forward. And she's maintaining like a forward active walk on her own. I'm not, chasing her around or constantly using the lunge whip to keep her walking. So it's nice that she's kind of developed her own little engine. This walk is super nice, and you can see I'm making the circle be as big as we can. This arena is huge. So she's obviously not working on a 20-meter circle. It's probably more like a 30. So there you could see when I used the whip to ask her to trot, there's like a slight, tension, a little bit of overreacting, where really rather than just go forward, she kind of like tensed and sucked back a little bit, but that's so much better than what I had been seeing. She stayed trotting, and she did go forward. So, and this trot looks really nice. She's relaxed. See the center on there a little bit to see if I can get a deeper stretch. Her nose is kind of like right at her knees, and I know she can do a deeper stretch. So this canter, you can see, looks really nice. She's stretching. She's got a nice 3-beat canter. And so I just immediately let her come back to the trot. Oh, this is where she tells me the surf single's bugging her. But that canter, I mean, obviously this is her stronger side, but that canter just looks really nice. So it's fun to be at this stage because everything just comes together. Like, we're doing the same work, it's just now there's like more things to do. So it's fun to be able to play with the canter a little bit. So yeah, here I just was like, all right, I need to fix this. So I just made the second buckle a little bit looser for her to see. She was itching at the back side of it, so I thought maybe it was tight. But her weight stayed pretty much the same. I mean, she doesn't, like, to me, she doesn't look chunky. I mean, she has a big barrel, but she, I feel like it's just like turned into muscle. So she hasn't really, like, with the surf single and her fly sheet and stuff, she's pretty much stayed the same size. But she looks really fit. I think one of the things too is, like, when she first came, her belly was kind of like, I guess you could say, sagging. Like, she seemed like she wasn't using her abs very much. And I think one of the things I've noticed is, like, the underside of her belly, like, she's holding her belly up herself. It's not just like hanging there. You can see her abs working, which is really cool. there, like when she looked up and she was looking out at the other field, I didn't immediately correct her because I know she naturally stretches really well on her own. So I just kind of let her look, and then, so there was kind of like a moment where that was like her response to the whip, is kind of like a little like, like let me take a couple steps and placate you. She did stay forward, but that tends to be a little bit her response to the whip sometimes. Rather than just give me a bigger walk, it's like, let me give you this tiny little trot and then go back to how I was walking before. But anyway, when she looks up like that or she's not stretching, all I do is take a little bit of contact with the rein, and because she's already forward, she softens and goes back into a stretch. The only time I find that doesn't happen is if there's something going on that she's trying to look at. Like she wants to be able to see what it is for a second. Sometimes people come over and they'll be playing fetch with their dog, and so she'll see something like, some furry thing flying out of the side of her eye. So I just let her have the look. She stays relaxed, and then I ask her for the stretch again. And so that's really, when you're doing this work with her, that's really all it is, just keeping her forward, and then asking for the stretch when it seems like it's not quite as deep as you might want it. So the trot looks nice, it's forward, it's swinging. The only thing I'm trying to do here is, because even like a little bit of rein contact, even to the side, like obviously there's no backward pressure on the bit, but even a little bit of rein pressure, she tends to curl back. So I try to make the circle really big, and I try not to do a whole lot with the lunge line, to see if I can get her to poke that nose out a little bit in the trot. And here, the canter's looking nice. She gave me a nice little stretch, and she comes back to the trot. And what's nice about the canter, now that it's an option to be able to work in the canter a little bit more, is that it generally improves the trot, because she has that little bit of extra energy naturally, that she comes back, and I find that she swings a little bit more, and she's pushing rather than necessarily, like if I use the whip to try to encourage her forward, she's going to get a little bit faster, rather than just like the natural impulsion allowing her to swing. So the canter can be great for that. And it's nice to just incorporate it a couple times during the work, and in small doses, again, just because I know when she does it really well, I don't want her to do it for very long. I just want to capitalize on those really nice moments and then let her have the break again, so that the canter isn't something she dislikes. I want to keep the work it's difficult work, but as easy as possible for her. So like giving her these big circles when she's, giving me this nice active stretch, I just try to make everything else as easy as possible, so that she feels some sense of reward for the work that she's doing. This is a really active marching walk, but you can see the energy just kind of pushing out through her nose, like coming all the way from her hind end over her top line and down her neck and out her nose, where she's just kind of in the relaxation. It wouldn't happen if there wasn't the relaxation there too. Like she's not holding tension, and so the energy just flows really well. So again, it's just nice to see all the pieces coming together. I love when we get to this stage. So you can see I tapped her. She kept walking forward. She obviously was a little tense because she knew I was asking her for something with the whip, but she stays walking, and I like that because she's aware, she's more sensitive to the whip, which is what I want. Like, I want some sort of reaction, but she's not overreacting. So this video was done it's been a little bit over a week ago, and even since then, she's like, the overreaction isn't really happening. We're getting a lot more like, if I tap, she just gives me a bigger walk, which is really all I want. A little miscommunication. I thought she was going after a bug, and then she thought I was letting her be done. She is almost done, but she has to keep walking a little bit more. And then we do a little bit of pee-off, which I'm excited to show you. The pee-off has, again, been going much better than I expected. I mean, both her and Heath are very smart, so it's pretty easy to teach them anything. With the pee-off, basically all I'm doing is asking for her to take, initially it was just for her to pick up one of her hind legs. Like, when I tapped on the top of her hindquarters, just for her to pick up a leg and put it back down. Even if she stepped forward, that's fine. Like, I just wanted something to happen. And she picked that up really quickly. So then, maybe the second or third session, I started tapping, and then I would release once she picked up a diagonal pair, like, basically like the trot pattern. So one diagonal pair she'd pick up and put down at the same time. And that's where we are now. She's figured that out, and she can do it. And so now it's just, eventually what I'll be looking for is for her to do the first diagonal pair and then the second diagonal pair. And then, she'll get the reward. And that's basically how the pee-off comes to be, is just kind of teaching the very fundamental, like, basically the footwork, and then asking for more energy until, okay, we're not trotting forward, but we are, in place lifting these legs, and it's going to happen a little bit quicker. So it's fun to see it come together. Any horse can learn this, and it's just building her strength up without having to, like, pull her together for collection. Like, this is really the foundation of collection work. So here I'm just rubbing the whip all over her so that, the whip isn't something that she hates. I'm just holding the reins, maintaining just very light contact. I want her to, if anything, to take steps forward like that. And when I tap, she, so like that step backwards, I don't want her to think backwards in the pee-off. It is a movement forwards. So I am not going to let off pressure until she's going forward again. And then if she does take a step forward, I don't immediately stop her with my reins. I stop tapping, and then I'll ask her to stand still again. And basically I just repeat that. Like, if I tap and she walks forward, I'll ask her to stop, and then I'll go back to, the tap on the hindquarters, so that she understands, like, I'm not trying to hold her in place and tap. Like, she's not going to get, like, stuck in this position. There's nothing, like, I'm not going to, like, pull her into this frame, but I'm just going to repeat it until we get what we want, and then she gets a treat. So she very much understands she's working for the treat. And I think she had ended up with a piece that's a little bit big, which is why she's still chewing here. So I didn't want to ask her to do anything until she was done eating. And then what you'll see in today's pee-off is that I miss her doing it well, like, 2, maybe 3 times, which as a trainer is frustrating because I always want to catch her being good and I want to release as soon as I can so that that consistency is there, and she'll learn faster if it's really consistent. I have to stand a little bit away from her to see around her belly and see the her like her right hind leg to see it lift with the diagonal pair. I have to stand a little bit further away, which she is fine with, but I have to kind of move myself from where I would normally be, which is a little bit more at the shoulder, in order to see it. And so I've just noticed that with her and her build. I just have a hard time seeing her legs. So now that I know, it hasn't been an issue, but in this session I did. So there was almost a diagonal pair, but she stepped forward. So I'm looking for her to just stand in place and pick up a diagonal pair. That was diagonal pair, and so I let her be done. And she actually, as I stopped her, she gave me a second one on the other side. So that was really nice. She gets a treat and she gets to be done. We'll walk around and then we'll come back. So I always kind of take her away so that it just is a lot of, the pee-off can be a lot of pressure. Depending on the horse, they feel a little bit overwhelmed. So Colby isn't like that, but I do the same thing with every horse. Is when they get their reward, we walk away from where we just were. So like they can just like breathe it out and get a nice like a break. So there, she gave me it right away. She picked up the diagonal pair. We stopped. I gave her a treat, and I wish we had stopped. Like this should have been the end of our training session. But I thought one more time. And unfortunately, I missed her cue, and you'll see it. But I want to show you this, like even that I'm not perfect, because she's still learning, and even though I'm making a mistake. So with every horse, we're never gonna be like 100% of the time, and we're gonna make mistakes. But she's still learning, and she's still gaining. You know what I mean? She's gaining knowledge, even though. So there, she kind of had that's a diagonal pair, but I missed it. She's backing up, so I asked her to come forward, and then I stopped her. She's kind of stepping forward, and I'm just waiting. You can see she's kind of almost. There was a diagonal pair. It was quick. She's backing up, and then there, she kind of stepped forward at the same time with the diagonal pair. And that's where we finished. I wish we had finished with the last time, because it was perfect. She knew exactly what she was doing, and I didn't have to really ask. And there you could just see like there was miscommunication, and then she did it right and I missed it. So hopefully that was helpful to see in some respects. But I just I like the way she's coming with the pee-off. She totally understands it. I will definitely do another video shortly, even if it's just on my cell phone, to show you what the pee-off is looking like, because after this session, I gave her a couple days off, and I only do it normally once a week. But this week, I may have done it twice since this video, and it's coming together now, like really well. So I'll definitely show you that. Everything else is looking really good, about the same. Like she's stretching really well, doing really well, and I'll get another video of her sometime this month in September. But I'm really happy with her progress overall. She's looking relaxed, she's looking good. And if you have any questions, let me know. And any thoughts or suggestions.